One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. We in. One, two, one, two. One, two, one, two. One, two, one, two over here. One, two over there. Make sure everybody's in. Everybody can hear me. And let me see. We are here. We got to see if that's good. There, we are good over here. We are good over there. We are good over here. Good morning, YouTube. Good morning, Rumble. Good morning, X. Good morning, Facebook. Let's make sure that LinkedIn is working. We're going live over here on LinkedIn. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We are live on LinkedIn. Good morning, everybody over there on TikTok. And let's make sure Instagram is good. They say that they are telling my followers that I have started a live video, but I don't see any activity yet on Instagram. But we are getting started either way. And all right, we're good on Instagram. Good morning, everybody. What we're going to talk about here today, as y'all are coming in, let me make sure these are populated properly. 1, 2, 3. Yes, we're going to talk about Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy, who did run for president, didn't win, but he did run for president, or he ran for the ticket. He ran for the Democratic ticket in 2024, didn't win, dropped out of the race. And I didn't think he really had a chance to win. Once we knew Trump was in, we knew that he wasn't going to win. But he has still remained a solid voice in just American politics, period. Very well-spoken individual. And he came out with a statement the other day. I think it was maybe Friday or Saturday. He came out with a statement talking about America. I'm going to read the statement in full, and we're going to discuss if he was right or wrong with what he said when it came to America, where we're at in terms of the quality. The general point of what he was talking about was the quality of the type of candidates we are putting forward. When I say we, I mean people who are American citizens, type of candidates that we're putting forward for certain jobs, specifically in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics space, also known as STEM. And what he had to say about it as compared to people coming in from other cultures, and what he sees as a juxtaposition between what is culturally accepted in the United States or promoted versus what is culturally accepted and promoted in other countries that are sending people who are excelling in the STEM categories to America to take jobs that otherwise would have went to Americans had these immigrants not come into the country. And he had an opinion on it. Now, he being from an immigrant family himself, he was born in America, but his family comes from, I believe he comes from India. And it led to a very interesting discourse on social media, specifically on X, was the only app in which I engage in this stuff. But first, we're going to read what Vivek actually had to say I'm going to read his full statement from X that came out. When did he say this? He said this on the 26th, which was what, the day after Christmas? So that was last Thursday, he said this statement, and it's been bubbling on social media ever since. I'm going to read it in a second. Let me introduce myself first. For those who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day, former 9-year pro athlete, author of 35 books on 4 TEDx talks. Create this brand called Work on Your Game. What we do over here is we help high-level performers, the ambitious people, take their mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability to as high as possible level. Those of you who are serious about becoming top 2% performers in what you do and what you bring to the table, you're the type of people that we are looking to work with. I'm looking over on X, make sure that we are live. Yes, we are live on X. Okay, so let me go back and pull up Vivek's tweet, or his post. It's not a tweet anymore. His post that he put up on X this past Thursday. I'm going to read what Vivek said, and then we're going to discuss it here today. That's going to be the topic here today. Y'all ready for this? So first, let me read. I'm reading straight from Vivek Ramaswamy's post on X from this past Thursday. Quote, the reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over open quote or quote unquote native Americans isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit, which is a lazy and wrong explanation. A key part of it comes down to the C word. And the C word, he says, is culture. Tough questions demand tough answers. And if we're really serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth. And he puts truth in all capital letters. He goes on. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 90s and likely longer. That doesn't start in college. It starts, all caps, young. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zach and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. This is in parentheses, fact. I know multiple sets of immigrant parents in the 90s who actively limited how much their kids could watch those TV shows precisely because they promoted mediocrity, and their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. Close parentheses. More movies like Whiplash, fewer reruns of Friends. More math tutoring, fewer sleepovers. More weekend science competitions, fewer Saturday morning cartoons. More books, less TV. More creating, less chilling. More extracurriculars, less hanging out at the mall. Most normal American parents look skeptically at those kinds of parents, quote unquote. More normal American kids view those kinds of kids with scorn. If you grew up aspiring to normalcy, normalcy is what you will achieve. Now, close your eyes and visualize which families you knew in the 90s or even now who raised their kids according to one model versus the other. Be brutally honest. Normalcy doesn't cut it in a hyper-competitive global market for technical talent. And if we pretend like it does, we'll have our asses handed to us by the country with the C word that ends in an A that I got to be careful if I can say them or not on certain apps. So I'm not saying their name, but the country, y'all know what I'm talking about. This can be our Sputnik moment. We've awakened from the slumber before, and we can do it again. Trump's election hopefully marks the beginning of a new golden era in America, but only if our culture fully wakes up. A culture that once again prioritizes achievement over normalcy, excellence over mediocrity, normal nerdiness over conformity, hard work over laziness. That's the work we have cut out for us. Rather than wallowing in victimhood and just wishing for or legislating alternative hiring practices into existence. I'm confident we can do it. And then he posted 2 American flags. Okay, so that's the entire statement from Vivek Ramaswamy. What we're going to do today is we're going to discuss if he was right or wrong and why, and in what aspects he was right or wrong. So if you have a question or comment on anything that I say here today, just hold it until the end, or you can post it while I'm talking, and I'll address all of it after I get through my points. But this is an interesting conversation, and I'm glad that he brought it up because him bringing it up got more people to talk about it than if an American had brought it up, being that he comes from a unique situation. So what they're generally referring to, for those who don't know, is this thing called the H-1B visa program. For those of you who are not familiar with this program, I'm going to give you a basic overview of what the program is. And a visa is basically what someone needs if they're not an American, they don't hold an American passport or American citizenship, but they want to come over to the United States, particularly for work. So what it is a non-immigrant visa in the United States that allows U.S. employers to temporarily hire foreign workers in specialty occupations requiring specialized knowledge and a bachelor's degree or higher, or its equivalent in a specific field. It is commonly used for roles in technology, engineering, finance, education, and healthcare. Okay, so I'm out of the definition now. This H-1B visa basically is what employers use to hire someone who's not American as opposed to hiring an American, simply because the employer believes that the non-American person that they are going to basically import into the country is a better candidate for the job than if they were to hire someone who already lives here in Maryland or Indiana or Nebraska. That's what the H-1B visa program is. And there are many Americans who have some issues with the H-1B visa because they see it for what they believe it is, which is a way for employers to skip over an American and instead import another person who's not American for a job that is right down the street from where they live. And the question here is, should America or American companies be forced to hire someone in America or hire someone who they believe is more qualified who is not from America? This is an interesting conversation. So that's what we're going to talk about here today. Now, Vivek is speaking specifically about the STEM field. Again, science, technology, engineering, and math is generally what he's talking about. But this applies to any high level achieving space that is accessible to everybody. I believe this conversation is bigger than that because this can apply to any space in which people are high level performers, excluding athletes and entertainers. We're not going to talk about them because that's the space that most people never work in. Most people are not qualified or even eligible to work in. And even though we know about them, they're very visible. Most people are never going to work in that line of work. That's a 1%, 2% type of thing. So the question here, going to what Vivek said, what he referred to, he didn't say this in so many words, but he came close enough to it that we can have a conversation on this assumption. He is saying that American culture, he was referring to American culture being lazy compared to that of the culture of people who come here as immigrants. And the question is this true? Is this true? That's my question to the audience. Someone post in the comments, what do you think? Is this true? He's saying that the culture in the United States espouses and celebrates mediocrity and laziness over the cultures of people who come from other places who come here as immigrants, that their culture is not that of laziness. Is this true? Yes or no? My answer to the question is absolutely yes. Yes, in all capital letters with exclamation points at the end. Yes, we in America are a lazy culture. We have a very lazy culture. As the saying goes, hard times make for strong people make for good times make for lazy individuals lead to hard times, or soft or weak individuals. We are headed into a period of challenging times, or maybe in it right now, some of you may feel, which may be one of the reasons why the election outcome was the election outcome, because we have a lot of soft individuals. And the reason we have soft individuals in America is because our country and our world has become so safe, so convenient, so easy that people have lost their work ethic. As a general observation, people in America are just lazy. Yes, Americans are lazy. We do not work. I've known people, I'm not an immigrant, but I've known people from immigrant backgrounds. Even when I was in school, any of you who's an American, a native American, and you went to school with people who come from immigrant backgrounds, whether they were an immigrant themselves or their parents were immigrants, like they're right, the first generation born in America, or maybe even the second, they had a completely different work ethic as far as what their parents expected of them in school, as far as what they did in terms of extracurricular activities, as far as how they looked at the opportunities in front of them. We Americans tend to take these opportunities for granted. Americans tend to take for granted that we live in America. Any of you who is born in America, raised in America, and has always lived here, if you have never been outside of the country, or you don't know a lot of people who are not from America, I suggest you go take a trip to damn near any other country besides the United States, outside of the North America. Go over to countries in Europe and just see how the lifestyle is different. Even actually, you go to the country to the south, you can go to Mexico and you can see this. You can talk to some friends of yours who come from immigrant backgrounds, whose parents are from immigrant backgrounds. Maybe they're from America, but their parents were not. And just learn about the upbringing, learn about what their parents told them about how life was and why they ended up coming to America in the first place. They highly value the opportunity to be here in the United States because they understand what the alternative is. They understand the alternative of the place that they left. There's a reason why people want to come to the United States of America, no matter how much many Americans, ungrateful Americans, trash the United States. Many of you do not understand. Many of you do not understand why so many people come here. Maybe you think you understand it because you say, well, it's the land of opportunity and free speech and you can practice whatever religion you want. If you have not seen it or talked to someone who's lived it, or someone who's right next to somebody who's lived it, you don't quite understand it. And this is why a lot of Americans take America for granted, and the opportunity that you have here and the freedom that you have here to basically be and do whatever you want. There are many countries in the world where you do not have the freedom to just be whoever you want to be. You can't just do what you want to do. It's not culturally accepted. While technically you could, it's not culturally accepted, meaning your parents are going to tell you, no, you're not going to be that. You're going to be this. And you really don't have any recourse, and you don't have any public support of anybody who's going to co-sign you going against the grain of what your parents told you. You can't just you can do that in America. You can do it in America. You can disagree with your parents, decide you're not going to follow in their footsteps or listen to anything that they say. And when you turn 18 or you get old enough to pay your own bills, you can separate from them and basically never deal with them ever again. Does that happen in other countries? Yes, but it's much more rampant here in America. In other countries, there is not. Also, another thing about this is that our media system, the culture that we have here in media, is that you can basically be raised by the TV and the internet in the United States of America. In other countries, that doesn't happen. Again, any of you who's never been anywhere, you don't understand this. In other countries, they don't get raised by the TV and the internet. Some of you have kids right now who are being raised by the TV and the internet, and you don't even realize it. All right, they're your kids, but they're being raised by social media. You don't even know how they're being raised and what they're being indoctrinated with because you ain't doing the work. The internet is doing the work. They're getting raised by TikTok. Some of your kids are getting raised by TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and you don't even know what they're consuming on those apps. You gave your kid a phone when they were 5 years old or an iPad, and they're on it all day while you're doing other things. They're raising your kids. In other cultures, that does not happen. They don't allow that to happen. And any of you who sees a kid, and this is a different conversation that we'll have on a different day at some point, but you see a kid who is just staunchly in complete disagreement with their own parents as far as worldview, as far as how they look at life, as far as their not necessarily political views, but just overall cultural views and ideologies. This happens in the United States more than any other place because in the United States, parents do not, as a general rule, I'm saying this is a widespread thing, parents generally do not make sure that they enforce a certain worldview onto their children. And some of you who are Americans, you Westerners, you're looking at that and saying, well, Dre, isn't that a good thing? Kids should be allowed to be whoever they want to be and do whatever they want to do and live however they want to live and think however they want to think. I disagree with that. I was just listening yesterday. Candace Owens had this interview with Ray J. You know Ray J, Brandy's brother, entertainer himself and business guy. Now, Ray J has some type of reality TV show that he's doing. I have not seen it. My first time hearing about it was listening to this interview with Ray J. But Ray J is on the show with Candace Owens, and he brought someone else with him who is a woman who is actually a man but is living as a woman. All right, y'all get what I'm saying. I got to be careful with certain language on certain applications here. And one of the things that Ray J said, because Ray J is a parent himself, and Candace is a parent herself. This person that they have with them, they're not a parent because it's a man. And anyway, Ray J said, one of the things that he said as part of the conversation, and it was a good conversation, was that, I'm going to support my kids to let them be whoever they want to be and do whatever they want to do. I disagree with that. I do not support that concept. No, my kid is not going to do whatever they want to do. Now, they can do whatever they want to do within the confines of what their parents tell them that they can do and what they can't do. They can't just do whatever they want to do, and they can't just be whoever they want to be, not while they're living under my roof. Now, you move out, you go do what you want to do. But by the time my kid moves out at age 18, let's just say, they're going to be indoctrinated with a real worldview that I have installed into their mind. And I'm doing that on purpose. I'm doing it intentionally, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with every child that I have. Why? Because they're living under my roof, and I want them to look at the world a certain way. I'm not leaving it wide open. Just do what you want to do. See, leaving it wide open and letting your kids do whatever they want to do and think how they want to think and be influenced by whatever they want to be influenced by. This is how we end up with a man becoming a woman and then going on TV and arguing and defending it. And people saying, yeah, they're right. They can be whoever they want to be. Bullshit. See, this is what happens when we have a weak society of people who don't stand on principle. And this is what Vivek is referring to. He didn't say it in so many words, but this is what he's getting towards. I'll say what he didn't say. In our culture, what we have is a breakdown of principle. I'm talking about America in general, black people, white people, everybody. In the United States of America, we have a breakdown of principle, which leads to a breakdown in culture, which leads to chaos in society. This is a reflection of what we call the law of entropy. The law of entropy is a scientific law. Again, it's not a theory. It's not an opinion. It's a law that states anything left to its own devices and left by itself eventually descends into chaos and disorder. Simple as that. If you want an example of the law of entropy, look at a house that has been abandoned. Nobody's living in it and nobody's taking care of the house. What does it look like? You see the doors breaking down. There might be broken glass. The yard out in the front has weeds all in it. You can ride by an abandoned house and you can tell that it's abandoned, right? You don't even have to know. You don't have to go on the internet and Google the address, you know that the house is abandoned. You can tell by looking at it. All right, nobody's taking care of that house. It's obvious that nobody lives in that house. Y'all can tell, right? What happens? That's the law of entropy. You leave something by itself, it just gets worse. If you don't brush your teeth or floss your teeth for a month straight, what's going to happen to your teeth? All right, you know what's going to happen. If you don't go to the gym or work out or look after your nutrition or your diet for years, what happens to your body? All right, everybody knows the answers to these questions. These are a reflection of a scientific law that is called entropy. In the United States of America, one place that we're experiencing the negative of entropy is in that we do not have strong principles, and we are not defending our principles. Now, had Kamala Harris won the past election 2 months ago, I think we would have descended even further into chaos and disorder, which is why it's a sign of hope. It is not solving the problem because the president only gets 4 years, but it's a sign of hope that Americans went and voted for Donald Trump. And that's an inkling of an idea that people are looking to stand on some sort of principle, because Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, he's clear about where he stands and he's clear about where he doesn't stand. And one of the things that he said was America first. One of the things that he said is we want to make America great again. Whatever you think that means, he is standing on a clear principle. What was Kamala Harris standing on? If we listen to what she was saying, she was standing on what they call reproductive freedom, which means what? We want to give women as much opportunity and ability as possible to murder a child that they have voluntarily conceived. All right. What kind of principle is that? That's what she was standing on. That was one of the major foundations of her campaign, was that I want to give mothers or expectant mothers as much opportunity as possible to murder the children that they voluntarily created by having unprotected sexual intercourse. All right. That's a principle that she was standing on. She ran a whole campaign on that and she almost won. That's a reflection of America. It's not even a reflection of Kamala, because Kamala Harris is a politician, and a politician is they're going to test the winds. They're going to test the water, find out what's working, what people are listening to, what people are responding to, and they're going to run on that. They're going to run on whatever they believe is going to help them get elected. That's what you got to do. That's politics in the United States of America. The fact that she looked outside and looked at the climate in America and said, if I go and promote this, a bunch of people are going to support me and vote for me. That's a reflection of us. That's not a reflection of her. That's a reflection of us. Because had it not been Kamala, Joe Biden would have been doing the same thing. Now, it sounded better coming from her because she's a female, but he would have been saying the same thing. Had it been somebody else, who else was trying to run? Whoever it would have been, they would have been saying the same thing. That's a reflection of us as people, that they said, oh, this is what's going to work with these people. We have no solid principles here in the United States of America. That's not a principle. All right, that's not a principle. That's a preference. It's an opinion. It's not a principle. We have no principles here. And people who come from other cultures, these other cultures have strong principles. All right, they stand on something. And what's happening in Western society in general, not just in America, but America is the biggest reflection of this, because everybody else follows us, at least for now. That may change. But in America, in Western society as a whole, is this whole laissez-faire, do as thou wilt, live however you want to live, be whoever you want to be, do whatever you want to do. And whatever somebody else wants to do, we have to support it, we have to accept it, and we have to defend it. Bullshit. No, we don't. We do not have to support, accept, and defend it. If a boy is Mike on Friday and he comes to work on Monday and he says, hey, everybody, I'm Michelle, and these are my new pronouns, and you have to accept it, or you're going to get fired from your job and you're going to have a meeting with the HR department, that's bullshit. That's not acceptable. I'm not going along with that. That's bullshit. And there are people out there who, some of you who are listening to this are probably who I'm talking about. Because you need to keep your job, you go along with the bullshit. See, that's a reflection of the fact that our principles have eroded. I'm not saying you personally. That's a reflection of our culture. Our principles have eroded, because there was a time when a bunch of people with balls would say, hell no, when I'm not doing that. Hell no, I'm not going with that. And everybody in the office will say it. They can't fire the whole team. They can fire one or two people. See, they can fire one or two people at a 100-person company who say, I'm not going to call this person by these quote unquote preferred pronouns because they were a man last week. Now they're a girl. And see, if only one or two people are standing up, they can fire the one or two. But if all 100 people say, no, that's some bullshit, boss, we're not going with this. No, you're not a girl. You're still a man, even if you want to put a dress on. And they couldn't fire everybody because there were principles that everybody was raised on. And everybody stood on those principles. It wasn't, let me think about it. Should I say something, not say something? There wasn't even a question. But see, our culture is falling apart, and this is why we get the nonsense. So I've diverted from what I'm talking about here. Let's get back to where we were. There are many people who come from other countries, because the whole question here is our culture lazy. Our culture is lazy, mentally lazy, we're emotionally lazy, and we're physically lazy. And people come from other cultures not expecting handouts. Now, a lot of Americans who expect handouts. The reason why affirmative action was what it was for so long, reason why DEI was what it was or is what it is for so long, and I'm referring to not just black people, but white people, Latin people, everybody. The reason why these things have existed is because Americans have grown accustomed. Some of you have lived your entire lives being taught and believing, indoctrinated to believe that you should get something just by virtue of existing. Bullshit. No, you shouldn't. You don't deserve shit. Many of you have been raised on this, and many of you solidly believe it. Many of you will argue for this, that something should be given to you just because you're you, just because you exist, and just because that thing exists, you should have it just because you're you, for no other reason. I should have this just because I'm me and I'm here and it's available. It should be mine. No, it shouldn't. No immigrant comes to the country with that mindset. We got any immigrants listening to this? Any immigrants in here in the comments? Let me know if I'm on track here or if I got this wrong. Any immigrants here listening to this who live in America, but you or your parents came from another country and came here? Did you come here with an entitlement mindset that something should be given to you just because you exist and you're here? If you are, please tell me that you have that mindset. I've never met, this is an anecdotal point, I've never met an immigrant or first generation born in America. I've never met an immigrant who had that mindset. I haven't met any. None. Has any of you met one? I haven't met any. Only Americans have this mindset. I'm not saying every American has it. I'm born in the United States of America. My parents, grandparents from the United States of America. And I have the mindset of anything I get, I'm going to earn. I come from the sports world. In the sports world, you can't fake it. In the sports world, you can't relationship yourself into an opportunity to actually be on the court. Actually, you can, but you can't stay on the court with that. You got to actually earn it with your performance. And this is the frame from which everything that I talk about comes, that you got to earn it. That's the in the athletic world. You cannot, I know the right person way. You can't, I know the right person your way all the way up to the top. It's impossible because eventually you got to get on the court or the field or the track or in the pool and you got to prove it. And if you can't prove it, then that's it. All right. Doesn't matter if your dad's the coach, your dad can be the president, your dad can be the boss. See, in the corporate world, your dad can be the boss, so you can know the right person. You can move all the way up to the C-suite with no skills. And even if you're underperforming, nobody can out you. They can say stuff, but you can still keep the job. See, in the sports world, that can't happen. In the sports world, you can't play is going to be obvious. So I'm lucky that I came from the sports world to understand this, but I've never seen an immigrant. I've never seen an immigrant have this mentality. Immigrants usually come here just wanting the chance to get the thing that is available. Again, some Americans, not all Americans, also have this mindset, myself being one of them and maybe many of you. But there are many Americans who don't have this mindset. They have the handout mindset, give me something just because I'm here mindset. And then when they see someone else going out and earning it, like an immigrant coming on that H-1B visa, like Vivek is referring to, they're like, well, why is this person getting it? I live in America. Why are they passing over me? I live right here in Indianapolis, and they're bringing over somebody from Islamabad to come take my spot. And you're like, hey, why are they bringing that person to come take the spot that should have been mine? Well, because that person's better than you. That's it. That person's better than you. They're a better candidate in the eyes of the person who was doing the hiring. That's why they brought that person in from all the way over there, even though they could have hired you from 3 blocks away. Because it's a performance-based business. And in certain industries, you must actually perform. Science, technology, engineering, math, you got to perform to get the job. Now, in some of these corporate places where some of you all work, some of these bureaucracies, in some of the educational spaces like, what's the word? Academia, you may not have to be that good of a performer. You just got to check the right boxes, know the right person, you can move yourself up, and you don't even have to be good. But there are other spaces where you do actually have to be good. And there are different ones, so it depends on the situation. But let's continue. What we're talking about here today is about Vivek Ramaswamy's comment on what he posted on X last Thursday. For those of you who didn't see it, I read it earlier. You can find it on his, if you just go to his X profile, you'll see it. So mediocrity over excellence. Is this what America pushes? Again, question to the audience. Does America push mediocrity over excellence? The answer is absolutely it does. And I'm going to answer questions and comments at the end, by the way. So if you have a question or comment you want me to see or respond to, just wait till I'm done and I'll get to it. I'm looking at, I got 7 different streams going here at the same time. So it's not just one stream. So if you see me not looking at the camera, whatever one you're watching, that's why. So in the United States of America, we accept mediocrity. Actually, we support mediocrity. You hear people all the time talking about, well, America should do more to help people who don't have stuff. But you never hear anybody talking about the people who don't have stuff need to do something to help themselves. You don't really hear people saying that. If somebody does say it, they immediately get pushback of why they're somehow callous or bad or rude or mean, or they are just not understanding enough of why a person may end up in an unfortunate situation. But you rarely hear anybody, especially a person in any type of position of status or power, or I'm talking politically, stuff like that. Rarely do you hear them say something like, hey, the people who don't have stuff need to do more so they can step their game up. They need to step their performance up, need to work on their games. Rarely do you hear that. In other countries, this either gets said or the people who don't have shit just get ignored. But in America, we support mediocrity. In America, actually, we cheer for mediocrity. I mean, we get happy about athletes and the sports team winning the championship, but generally, we accept and support mediocrity. We celebrate entertainers and athletes and social media nonsense over achievements of substance. So if there's in the Black community, for example, Beyonce and Jay-Z have more fans than some famous Black person who makes it to the Supreme Court, or what's the word I'm looking for here? An accomplished scientist or an accomplished educator. Those people don't get nearly as much attention as somebody who has a whole bunch of fans on social media or followers on the internet. We celebrate the entertainers and athletes. And I think Vivek referred to this a little bit, and TV personalities. We celebrate these things. Why? Because these things allow us to turn our brains off. See, watching a sports match or watching Beyonce perform at the Super Bowl or halftime of a football game, or looking at some Real Housewives of Atlanta on TV, or some famous social media person, you don't have to do any thinking you don't have to give any effort to consume that and to comment on it. It takes no mental effort, it takes no mental energy. Your brain doesn't have to sweat to consume that stuff. In the United States of America, we deify and look up to these people. Is this true or not? The United States of America, the entertainers and athletes are often more famous than the politicians. How many of you can name 10 Congress people? Now, I don't think I can even name 10 Congress people. Maybe I can name 10 if I try really hard. But how many of you can name 10 athletes and entertainers? Most of you can name 100 athletes and entertainers. Why is that? That's cultural. It's not even about you personally, but you're just a reflection of the culture. I'm a reflection of the culture in many ways as well. And again, you can be exceptional in some ways, but our culture, I'm talking about the whole culture as a whole, we look up to the athletes and the entertainers more than we look up to the political leaders, the educational leaders, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematical leaders. We don't even know these people's names. We don't even know their names. You could be sitting next to them on a plane, you wouldn't know who they were. But if you were sitting next to some famous rapper on a plane, you'd be taking your phone out immediately to take a picture of them, or some famous athlete, you would know exactly who they were. In our culture, this is who we push forward. The challenge with this is most people will never become a famous entertainer or a famous athlete. So we spend our time living vicariously through the entertainer, even though we can never become the entertainer. And see, in other cultures, here's what they do. They deify and they look up to, if they do any deification at all, usually is of religion. They don't really deify people the way we do in the Western society. In Western societies, we tend to deify people and then we live through them. In other societies, they deify the effort, the family, the entire community, or the people who are the leaders that are preaching substance. That's what they deify. And over there's not these famous athletes and entertainers walking around. Yeah, they have them in those countries, but they don't get nearly the same wave of engagement, let's just say, from the people that they get over here in the United States and in generally Western society. And again, here's the thing. America is the leader. Other countries look to us, but they also have learned, or there are some aspects of America that we're going to copy and some aspects that we don't. That country that I didn't say earlier, but I referred to with the C word, I just watched a documentary about their leader, their current leader. His name starts with the letter X. And that guy, I was watching just him speaking to his people and speaking in his native language. And the things that he was saying, y'all know that over there that there's no YouTube, there's no Google, there's no Facebook. You can't even use those apps over there. And people can use them through VPN, but they don't allow those apps in a simple way for a simple reason, because they see the way that people are influencing the United States of America. And they said, we don't want that. We don't want our kids being raised on that nonsense. We don't want our kids being raised on that garbage. We don't want our kids being raised on that junk. And by the way, this app, the one that I'm looking at right now, TikTok, that the settings and the way that app works in America is completely different from how it works over there. And that country, they own this app, at least for now. All right. The settings over there are completely different. You can't use it the same way over there that you use it over here, even though it's the same app, technically. Why? Because they understand the cultural influence of these devices. And in America, it's just do whatever you want to do. Over there, you can't just do whatever you want to do. You can't just be whoever you want to be. The culture tells you what you're going to do, what you're going to be. Some of you may say, well, that feels very constricting. That feels like I don't have complete freedom. Well, yeah, you think that way because you grew up in America where you're used to being able to just think and do whatever you want. And there is value to that on some levels. But there are some negatives to that on other levels. I've given you some examples. Again, how is it that 50 years ago, your grandparents, if you went up to one of your grandparents 50 years ago and said, hey, I was in school yesterday, Grandma, and my classmate, Mike, he came to school today and now his name is Michelle. Your grandparent would say, what are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. You're making up stories. Don't lie to me, boy. Or they would just laugh you out of the room because that sounds completely ridiculous. Now, if we hear that, we say, okay, yeah, I know that probably happened. 50 years from now, you know what's going to be happening? That's going to be completely normal. It's not even going to be a conversation. If America keeps going the direction that it's going. Am I right or am I wrong? 50 years from now, your grandkids will go to school and one of their classmates was Mike on Friday. Now they're Michelle on Monday. And it's going to be completely normal. It's not even going to be a conversation. All right. Oh, you're not Mike anymore. You're Michelle. All right. What's up, Michelle? It's going to be just like that. It's not even going to be a conversation. There won't be anybody live streaming talking about it 50 years from now. Because in America, it's just do whatever you want to do. Trying to beat over there on YouTube. Appreciate the super chat. This is the game that we're getting in, folks. And in other cultures, this does not happen. Why? Because their principles are rooted in things that are bigger than who's the biggest celebrity, who has the most followers on social media, who's the most entertaining. See, in our culture, this is what Vivek said. We deify the entertainment, and entertainment makes people lazy. This is what y'all got to understand. When your focus is on entertainment and looking up to the entertainers, the problem is only 1% of people become famous entertainers, which means 99% of us are watching some shit that we will never even fucking do. And we're getting excited about it. This is what we do. This is what we do in our culture. We're getting excited over the football team and over Beyonce. And most of us are never going to be on the football team and we're never going to be Beyonce, but we put all of our attention and our focus, two of our most important resources and our time, most important resource, into watching them. We're never going to become them. And this makes us lazy because we're not focusing on what we need to do as our culture. In other cultures, this does not happen. They don't base everything around entertainment and athletes and watching other people live. They base it around what you need to do so you can live. And this is why the people who come over here come with a completely different mindset and why they easily surpass Americans who've been here for 10 generations. They come over here, second generation, already beating you. How is that? They just got here. How they beating you already? Because their mindset is completely different. Their focus is making them career ready. Their parents push them to be career ready. Looking at immigrant families, again, any immigrants in here, tell me if I got this right or wrong. They don't let their children just sit and watch TV or play video games or do non-thinking activities in volume. Now, Americans, how many of you see parents doing that? How many of you parents are willing to admit, sheepishly maybe, that this is exactly what you let your kids do? You let your kids, when they're old enough to think, let's just say let's say 5 years old, and you have a kid 5 years or older, or you've seen a kid 5 years or older, they're old enough that they can walk, talk, generally go to the bathroom by themselves. They know how to read, and just on a basic level. How many of you seen kids allowed to watch as much TV as they want, play video games all day if they want to, or just do non-thinking activities all day, every day? How many of you see parents allowing their kids to do that? In other cultures, it is not as rampant. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. It's not as rampant in other cultures. In other cultures, the parents will say, hey, no, you're going to read books. You're not going to play video games. You're going to read books. No, you can watch TV for an hour, but after that hour, no more TV for the rest of the day. That's not culturally a thing here in America. If someone in America did that, other parents would be looking at that parent like something's wrong with them. Oh, they one of those parents. They make their kids read books. They make their kids do this and that. My mom works in the educational system, and she works in a school that's basically in the hood, or at least she did. And one year she was telling me that the parents would get mad at her because she would send the kids home with homework. This is like second graders. And the parents would get mad and say, why you got my kid having to do all this homework? Now, generally, I've changed my mind on what homework is about. I understand why my mom did it, because she comes up in the system and she thinks that way. Generally, I don't think homework is a good idea, because you should be able to get all the work done in the course of the class or the school day. But at the same time, the reason these parents were complaining is not on that basis. They were complaining on the basis of, I don't want to have this, the parent. I don't want to have any involvement in my child's education. I just want you to do everything, and I don't even know what's going on. That's not the way it's supposed to be. In other cultures, again, this is not a thing. It is not a prevalent thing. It is not an accepted thing. For years, my background is in basketball. That's how I first came out on the internet. I would have basketball players tell me, and this is players who live in other countries. They might be 14, 16 years old, something like that. And they would say, Dre, I want to play basketball. And they're influenced by watching YouTube and watching the internet. They want to play basketball because in other countries, they all watch American media. So they see the shit that we're doing. And a lot of kids will grow up thinking that they want to do that stuff. But their parents, I would have players tell me this all the time. Their parents would say, hey, you need to stop focusing so much on basketball and instead focus on school. You need to go to school so you can be an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor. That's what their parents would tell them. And their parents would say, yo, I'm not driving you to the basketball gym so you can spend 2 hours playing basketball. You need to take that same 2 hours and spend it on reading these books and getting ready for school so you can be a higher performing student. And I would understand 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would hear from these kids and I would understand their plight, because I thought differently then than I think now. And I would understand their plight and have them understand. And I would let them know that I understood. I understand you want to play ball and your parents are trying to basically force you into a certain career or steer you in a certain path that you don't really want to go. And I was of the mindset coming up here in the West, as many of you have, that, well, a kid should just be allowed to do whatever it is that they want to do. And if they're 14 and they decide they don't want to be an engineer or a lawyer, they want to try to be a basketball player, they should try it. I don't think that way anymore. And for several reasons. First of all, not everybody's going to make it as an athlete. 100 people who try to make it as an athlete, 99 of them ain't making it. All right. Same thing with becoming a singer or a rapper. Most people ain't making it on that path. The challenge is that because you can get on the phone or in the internet and you see the people who get all the attention are the athletes and the entertainers, you come to believe that it must be easy to become an athlete or an entertainer because that's all you see. When the fact of the matter is only 1 out of 100 who actually makes it. It's just that 1 out of 100 gets 100% of the attention. So it seems like it's easy and ubiquitous until you try it and you realize that it didn't work. And now you realize that the time that you invested into trying to make it as something that you never had a chance of becoming, now you got to compete against people who weren't brainwashed in that way. They've been focusing on who they could actually become. And now they're kicking your ass because they're 15 levels above you and you can't catch up. This is what happens. This is what happens to Americans when some immigrant comes in here and they've been focusing on how do I best prepare myself to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. That's what they've been doing instead of trying to be an OnlyFans girl or a rapper or a YouTube influencer. And now you got to compete with them. They're 15 years ahead of you. You ain't catching up. Game over. Game over. And now you're complaining about it because now you're getting your job, what quote unquote your job was never your job, your spot is getting taken by somebody who's more prepared than you were. because their parents didn't let them try to be a YouTuber. Their parents said, no, you're going to read these books because you're going to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. And now they're a doctor, engineer, or lawyer. You're trying to be one, but you can't compete because they're all better than you. This is what happens. And this is the responsibility of the parents. So now, 15 years later, I understand what the parents were doing with those kids, because most of these kids would be some kid from India talking about he wants to try to make it to the NBA. You're probably not going to make it to the NBA. I understood why then they were thinking it, because, again, they're looking on YouTube and they see, oh, look at these people. They did it. Maybe I can do it. It's one way of looking at it, and it's possible. Doesn't mean you should try it. Anybody could be anything that they want to be within reason. All right. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try to be what you want to be, but it's within reason. And many of these parents, again, these kids from outside the United States, their parents were trying to get them career ready for a career, which usually is not going to be a YouTuber or a famous OnlyFans person or a basketball player, or you're not going to become Bruno Mars. So it's probably not going to happen. And next point. One of the things that Vivek said, this is a direct quote from his post on X that I read at the beginning of this stream. He said, more books, less TV. That one I agree with precisely. We only had to edit that comment. More books, less TV. Should I say it again? More books, less TV. Those of you who are parents, how much TV are your kids watching? And when I say TV, I mean screens. Let's just take TV out. Let's call it screens. How much time are your kids spending on screens as opposed to how much time they're spending on books? Any parents out here want to be honest? How much time are your kids spending on screens versus how much time they're spending on books? And again, they can be 5 years old on books. Your kids don't even have to know how to read. You can sit down with them and read a book to them. Novel idea. All right, you can do that. All right, how much time are you spending or allowing your kids to spend on it? Actually, forget your kids. How much time are you spending on screens versus books? Each one of you, adults, how much time are you spending on books versus TV? If we replace the screens with, again, material of substance, this is a more of a metaphor that is literal and is also metaphorical. Material of substance. When we say books, we mean material of substance. So you can look at a screen and be taking in something substantial. You could be on a screen taking an online course on engineering or a course on artificial intelligence and how to leverage it for your business. That you're looking at a screen, but it's something of substance, as opposed to you're looking at a screen and watching some Real Housewives of Miami argue with each other at a cocktail party over who said what about who yesterday in the confessional. See, what kind of material are you taking in? So again, that's why I said it's metaphorical as well as literal. Because I can be on the screen all day, but I can be on the screen taking online courses, building my own online courses, building my own landing pages and sales funnels, coaching people. I could be doing that through a screen, but I'm doing something substantial that's going to help build me up. Whereas you are looking at some soft porn on Instagram and you're consuming a bunch of nonsense of people arguing with each other over which rapper is better than the other rapper. How is that going to help move you forward in your career, your life, or how is it going to help you set your kids up for a solid future? It's not. But over here, again, since we allow so much of this wide open, this is what we get. All right, we get what you get what you pay for, folks. Everybody heard that saying before, right? You get what you pay for. All right, what do we pay for here? All right, your payment is through your 5 forms of investment: time, money, attention, energy, and focus. These are your payments. Every time you give your time, money, attention, energy, or focus to something, you're paying for it. And in America, we give time, money, attention, energy, and focus to entertainment. Sports is entertainment. Music is entertainment. The Super Bowl is entertainment. A lot of the nonsense we take in on social media is just plain entertainment. We pay for this, and this is exactly what we get. We get back what we pay for. And this whole concept of more books, less TV, again, metaphorically, this is not the American way of thinking. The American way of thinking is more TV, less books. Why? Because, well, let's back up. My parents used to refer, when I was a kid, they used to refer to TV as the idiot box. My dad would say that all the time. He called it the idiot box. And those of you who are old enough may remember this phrase. Nobody uses it anymore. But they called it the idiot box because when you turn on the TV, you could become an idiot. You didn't have to think anymore. Your brain could go on vacation while you sat there and got entertained by whatever was on the television. And in the United States, entertainment has only gotten bigger. Now that our screens have gotten bigger, we got a screen in our pocket at all times. Anytime you want to be distracted, you can pick up your phone and be distracted by whatever's on your social media apps. You got notifications going off every second telling you that you need to check this one, then check this one, then check this one to get constant dopamine hits. This is the culture that we've created, and we made it bigger and stronger than what it was before. The problem is making us weaker. That's the trade-off. The culture of being entertained and distracted is stronger, and the rewards for being in control of it are bigger. So if you run an entertainment space or you are the entertainer, then you can get a whole lot of ROI from this, because there are so many lazy, non-thinking Americans who want to consume the nonsense that you're putting out there. But if you're not one of the producers, but instead you are a consumer, you are losing. The problem with this is only 2% of people are the producers, 98% are the consumers. So as a whole, in aggregate, we are losing. 2% of people are winning. All right, this is getting on social media and arguing to defend Beyonce or LeBron James. They're winning. But the 98% of us who are having the conversations about them, we're not winning. You're a consumer. You're not a producer. You're not winning anything. They're winning. You're living vicariously through some entertainer who doesn't even know that you exist. You're not winning. They're winning. And in other cultures, again, this does not happen. So we emphasize this whole thing of whatever makes you happy. All right, if you're happy, then do it. If you're unhappy, then quit. All right, this is why we have such a high divorce rate in the United States of America. If you're not happy, then just leave. You're not happy. You're not having fun with this thing that you're doing, and you might as well just quit. You might as well just give up. You might as well just stop trying. We emphasize this whole happiness, do what you feel, freedom to be and do whatever you want, even if the prospects aren't great. All right. The trade-off of freedom in the United States of America is that we get a whole lot of nonsense because we got a whole lot of smart people running around using their freedom. I'm not even saying that we need to fix this in any way, quote unquote, because it isn't really a fix, because everything in life has a trade-off. The trade-off of your parents telling you, no, you're not going to try to be a YouTuber. You're going to be an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor, and you're going to study and you're going to go to school and you're not watching TV. You're going to read books. The trade-off of that is that you may grow up feeling like you were held back and not allowed to be who you wanted to be, but you did become a successful engineer. That's the trade-off. The trade-off of your parents telling you you could be whatever you want to be and try whatever you want to try and watch TV all day if you want to watch TV. The trade-off of that is that you, as a parent, might end up with a kid who was a boy, but now they became a girl, or you might grow up with staunchly conservative values, but your kid comes home one day and decides they want to challenge you on everything because of some bullshit they heard from some blue-haired professor at the college that you're paying for, and their professor is teaching them the exact opposite of the worldview that you taught them for 18 years, and you sent them to college, and now they disagree with you on everything and think you're a terrible racist colonialist because of what they heard in college, and because you didn't control what they were taking in and how they thought for 18 years. And now here you are at odds with your own kids because you didn't do the job. And your kid may try to become an OnlyFans producer or a YouTuber or a basketball player and fail to do so. And then when they try to go get a job in science, technology, engineering, and math, they're facing some kid who had a completely different upbringing. And that kid is kicking your kid's ass. And now your kid's 27 years old, moving back into the house and living in the basement because they can't get a good job, despite the fact they have $200,000 in student loan debt that you sent them to. That's the trade-off of your decisions. This is how it works. You just got to pick a struggle. You just got to pick a struggle, ladies and gentlemen. Which one do you want? Which one do you want? Now, do you want your kids to be able to compete with other kids coming from other cultures? Then you better look around and see what they're doing. I'll tell you something that happened about, what year is it now? Let's just say it's 2025 by the time most people see this when we cut these clips out. A friend of mine, I will say is a male friend, and our background, we know each other from playing in sports. He reached out to me. This was probably about 2017, 2018. And he knew me, but we know each other well. And he knows that I have a podcast that I put out all the time, and I do live streamings, and he knew I wrote books and I talk about books all the time. And one day we're having a conversation. We speak on a regular basis. But in this particular conversation, one of the things that he said to me, and I will say this guy's black, and he said to me, hey, Dre, tell me a little bit more about like the books that you read and the kind of stuff that you take in and the content you're taking in, et cetera, et cetera. And I got curious as to find out why he was asking the question, because he had never asked me a question like that before. And we've known each other for a long time. And he said, well, you know, Dre, I'm looking around in my career, in my space. And again, this is a black guy. And he said, I'm realizing that these white guys that I'm competing with They've been doing this their entire lives. They've been reading books. They've been taking courses. They've been going to professional development. They've been doing things their entire lives, their whole upbringing, to prepare them to be better able to advance in the career that we're in. And I haven't been doing any of that shit. I need to catch up, and I need to catch up so I can compete with these white guys. And this is a black guy talking to me. And it's the exact same thing with Americans versus people who are coming from other countries. People don't come from other countries looking for handouts. Again, people who come legally, they come here looking for just the opportunity. All right. They believe they have the skill. They believe they're ready. They just want the opportunity to be able to compete. And then they're already hitting the ground running, because who they compete against? You Americans who've been watching YouTube for the last 15 years of your life. All right. Y'all ain't shit. Compared to them, this ain't no competition. 10K race against somebody who can't. That's all they want, is the opportunity. And they cherish the opportunity. Whereas Americans, we take it for granted. Oh, it's just be given to me because I'm American. See, that's what you think, because you've been here the whole time. You don't know what it looks like to not have it. And if you experience what it feels like to not have it, then it's a completely different situation. See, I know the whole saying people say, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, that's when you'll become successful. See, there are people who have the mindset of, I really need to be successful in this particular space. And it's like, I can't afford to not be successful, going against somebody who says, I want to be successful, but if I'm not, it's okay. See, that's those people coming from outside of the country on those H-1Bs versus Americans who come up here with this American arrogance that everything's just going to be all right because I'm here in America. And you get a rude awakening when they start slapping you upside the head with reality. So what you all have to understand, why Vivek was even talking about this, for people who don't understand the bigger picture, is that in the United States of America, we're in a competition for technical talent, technological talent. Why? Because the artificial intelligence is that's the next wave, in case any of you didn't know. Excuse me, the next wave of opportunity, next wave of wealth, the next wave of growth, whatever word you want to use, is through artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is a STEM topic: science, technology, engineering, and math. It's actually a combination of all four. That's what artificial intelligence is. And the countries who have the best talent of people who understand and can manipulate that stuff are going to be the leaders moving forward. And the thing about technology is that it gets faster and faster and faster in shorter periods of time, which means another country who has more talent when it comes to STEM is going to surpass every other country. Right now, we are not the best. So this position that America has had for the last, let's just say 100 years of being the world leader, or let's just say since World War II, let's just say the last 60 or so years, we're about to lose that position because other countries have more talent than us. The country that built this app, TikTok, they got more talent than us when it comes to STEM. That's why they got the best AI. That's why actually they have more people consuming material on this app than all the other apps every day. Right? TikTok's beating YouTube. They're beating Rumble. They're beating X. They're beating LinkedIn. They're beating Facebook. They're beating Instagram. They are beating us. Why? Because they got the best talent. That's why. And we ain't got the talent. So this is what Vivek was referring to. We got to import talent so we can try to compete in this race. Because right now we're losing. And if we keep competing with what we got, Americans, ain't no way we can win. We can't win that race. We cannot win just using Americans because we don't have the talent. Because Americans have been raised to consume nonsense and entertainment and cheer for athletes and argue about them on social media. Whereas the people in the other cultures, well, how they're being raised is, okay, you can watch the nonsense for an hour, then we're turning this off and you're going to get to those books. And you're going to be doing these math courses and you're going to learn engineering. And this is from kids. I'm not talking about school. I'm talking about just, this is your home life. And this is the way that it's working. And it's not a negotiation. It's not a, oh, well, I want my freedom to do what I want to do and be who I want to be. No, see, that's some American bullshit. That's some American shit that we came up with. They're not doing that in other countries. Go to another country and see if you see kids saying that to their parents. That shit don't fly. Only here in America. And again, there's a trade-off to this. The trade-off on that side is that a kid will look at us in America and say, well, I want to be as free as those kids in America. And a kid in America will look at them and say, oh, too bad they don't have freedom like me. The problem is 20 years from now, they're kicking your ass professionally. And you're like, damn, well, you're like, damn, well, how are these people beating me? I just told you how. See, the thing is, it's the long-term thinking that you got to consider. This concept called time perspective. All right. Time perspective means The general concept of time perspective is the following. The more successful the person, the further into the future they project the ramifications of their behavior. Let me say that one more time. Make sure you got it. When it comes to time perspective, the further into the future a person thinks about the ramifications of their behavior, the more successful they become. In other words, people who pursue what we call instant gratification tend to be less successful over the long term than people who are okay with what we call delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is do the hard work now, be successful later. Instant gratification is do the fun stuff now and have to do the hard work later. In other cultures, they are looking at us and saying we can beat these mofos. The way we can beat Americans is look at all the entertainment they're letting their kids consume when they're 7, 8, and 12 years old. Let's make sure our kids are not doing that so we can set a stronger foundation. So 20 years from now, when those same kids are now in their 30s and starting to hit their stride professionally, 30 to 50, hitting their stride professionally, our kids are going to be destroying their kids. And they thought about this back in the 90s, folks. That's why we're losing right now. All right, the chickens have come home to roost. The outcome of that long-term thinking started back in the 90s. Now we're seeing the results of it. Now you get Vivek Ramaswamy saying what he said because now we're starting to see the outcome. Oh, damn. We ain't going to be in charge anymore. We're not going to be the worldwide leader anymore. We're not going to be the power of the free world anymore because those kids who were 7 and 8 years old and they couldn't just watch TV. They had to read books. Now they're adults. Now they're beating us. Uh-oh. What do we do now? This is what's happening. All right, this is what's happening. And when we realize that we're losing, we're like, damn, we got to do something different than what we're doing. You wonder why Donald Trump won 2 elections, maybe 3? Because people realize we got to do something different. What we've been doing ain't working. So when someone comes along and says we got to do something completely different, throw this all out and do something completely different, Donald Trump represented that. I'm not saying he's talking about STEM. He doesn't. But what he does, he's representing we need a shift from what we've been doing. And most people don't understand the long-term game being played. They respond in the short term. And the response in the short term was Donald Trump winning that election the second time. Short-term response is MAGA. That's what happened. Now, we have to, again, in order to win this race, we got to import serious talent. And at the same time, Vivek talked about importing the talent. The other thing we need to do, and this is what he also mentioned, is that we have to change the culture and the cultural expectations of what we're doing with our own homegrown talent or what could be talent. We got to change the expectation of what we do with our folks. And it got to be less screens or less nonsense. Let's call it nonsense because you can look at the screen and take in good stuff. Less nonsense. All right. Less of the P word, less OnlyFans, less nonsense on YouTube, less arguing about entertainers and athletes, and more focusing on the thing that will make us stronger, smarter, better, and more able to compete 20 years from now when your 5-year-old is 25, 35, 45 years of age. And they're going to be the ones who are running in the race that we hopefully are still winning in 2075 or 20, 30 years from now. What was that? 2055. Now, Vivek doesn't say it, but he seems to be alluding to hiring people just because they're homegrown American. We're not going to do that. And this is where the whole DEI thing comes in. So I saw a lot of black people on social media over the weekend kind of making jokes like, oh, so now because Vivek is aligned with Donald Trump, they're like, oh, now MAGA is complaining about DEI. I thought y'all didn't. They're complaining that they want DEI. DEI meaning hire Americans just because they're Americans. Well, Vivek, who's on the MAGA side, is saying, well, we shouldn't hire Americans just because they're Americans. And they're like, oh, LOL. See, now y'all wanted Vivek on Trump's team. And now he's saying things that might go against this America first concept. And I get exactly what they're saying. But at the same time, black people don't get cocky because people have been saying that about black people for years. Like, hey, DEI was for the most part pushing people of color getting positions that they otherwise had not earned. And even before DEI was a thing, it's black people have been being told and pushing back strongly against this whole concept of, well, even though maybe the past wasn't so great for black people, you still got to earn your spot today. And a lot of black people have pushed back against that. So don't get happy just because now they're saying it to white people. All right, they've been saying it to black people for decades, and black people ain't been listening, just to keep it real. So nothing to get excited about, black folks. With all that being said, let's get into the comments here. Again, trying to beat over on YouTube. Thank you for the super chat. O-Dog says, I get what Vivek was saying, but if other cultures are so great, why they have to come to America to thrive in their own country? Well, it's not everybody in the culture. Number one, O-Dog, is specific people. Secondly, not everybody can get into America. Third, America has a certain level of infrastructure that will allow a high-level performer to thrive once they get here, that the infrastructure may not exist in their culture to where they can get it. Fourth, the ROI for being a high level performer in India is completely different than the ROI being a high performer in the United States when you live here. All right, the cost of living in those countries is way lower, and the salaries can be way lower, and especially if you're, again, when you're working over there, the money you can make is completely different than the money you can make over here. So several reasons. Gotti said leadership, opportunity, safety. Yeah, so you basically, there's the answer right there. It's a myriad of reasons. America's, yes, richest country in the world. You can get a whole lot higher return on investment plying your trade in America than you can plying your trade in a bunch of other countries. Excuse me. That's the reason people come here. All right, my same game, if I was living in a different country, would not be worth the same amount. Hertz Donut says, in the short term, stopping legal immigration hurt the economy, but it's something that we could recover from. Technically, you're right. The problem is by the time that we maybe get up to speed, the race will already be over. It'd be like the tortoise and the hare if it was a real story and not a fairy tale. The real story of the tortoise and the hare, ladies and gentlemen, is that it wouldn't be a race. There is no scenario in which a turtle can beat a rabbit in a race. And right now, we're the turtle. All right, so in the fairy tales, the turtle wins. In real life, the turtle does not win. All right, right now, we're the turtle, and other countries are the rabbits, and we're getting our asses kicked. That's the problem. Brando says, fair question, fair answer. Thank you. All right, let's see. All right, so now I'm going to go to Instagram, then I'm going to go to TikTok. If you got a question on TikTok, get it ready. I will address it in a second. If you posted something already, you got to post it again. Brandon said, visionary, Dre, visionary of what? So you have to be a realist. Yes, to a degree, yes, you have to be a realist. The thing about reality is that it's a very subjective thing. What's going on, Brittany? Good to see you again. Yes, to get the 10K likes, folks. Sarah said, exactly how we get a reality idiot as our president. People idolize entertainment over real life. Well, Trump came from entertainment, but he's also real life. Kathy says, so if the wages are suppressed, then you are illustrating an undercutting of American workers. I don't know what you mean by that, Kathy. I need more context. What do you mean by wages being suppressed? I didn't mention wages, except in answering Odell's question about how in America you can make more money doing the same job in America than you can make in another country. I don't know what you mean. Cheesehead Hef says, I allow my kids to be kids. Well, what does that mean? That can mean completely different things, two different parents. Alex Sands said, man operates on vibes and not facts. Who are you referring to? You mean man as in humans, or are you talking about a certain person? TTGX said, generalizations are never good, man. Well, generalizations are always good, and they're necessary, because if you didn't use generalizations, you would have to explain every possible exception to every single thing that was said. And that would be impossible because there's not enough time for anyone to, first of all, to explain that. And secondly, it's not enough time to digest. So if I say something like men are stronger than women, is that a generalization? Yes. But is it also true? Yes, it is. Are there exceptions? Yes. There are bodybuilding women who might be stronger than most men. But is it generally true? Yes, it is. So generalizations are good. They're necessary for human beings to interact. Because again, we don't have enough time or space to explain every possible exception, every possible statement. In traditional all day, yes, you gave an example there, a good example. Travels with Tia Diva says, but we still have the greatest country that everybody else wants to flock to. Yes, for now we do. That's the whole point of what we're talking about here, Tia. That for now we have the greatest country that everybody wants to flock to. People want to come here because of the freedom that you have here. You have the freedom of doing what you want, being who you want, saying what you want, and practicing whatever religion you want. And hopefully that stays a thing. But what many of you Americans, you arrogant Americans, do not understand is that nobody stays in power forever. America is a relatively young country. Remember, there were other countries already existing before America came to be. Just because we're in power doesn't mean we're going to stay in power. So don't get cocky. That's the whole point of what I'm talking about here today. Carol said, take your hard work back to your country then. Well, again, you can't get the same ROI for that hard work in another country. That's why people come here. Same reason that some of you might be born in Pittsburgh, but you'll move to Boulder, Colorado, because there's an opportunity there. All right. So people tell you to go back to Pittsburgh because you came and got a job that pays twice as much money in Colorado? Of course not. It's the same thing with immigrants if they can legally do it. Sugar, good morning. Sugar, haven't seen you back in the university yet. Carol said, all they do is get kickbacks and handouts to keep other Native Americans humble. No, I would not go that far, Carol. That's inaccurate. Tia said, that's those people. I was drowned in homework in a private school and my parents loved it. Yeah, I get it. I get the concept of homework being what it is. I have changed my views on that generally because I believe a teacher should be able to teach everything during the school day. How you in school 8 hours and you still got more work to do? Alexander said the only people left at corporations like Twitter and H1B are H1B because they can't leave. I don't know about that. I don't know about that, Alexander. You have to give me some context of what you're saying. They can't leave. Now, if you sign a contract, then you got to finish out the job. That's anybody, whether you're on a visa or not. But nobody's held here against their will. I don't know what you mean. Give me some context. Sarah said, everyone screams individuality unless they don't like someone else's choices. You know what? I generally agree with that concept. You're right about that. Tia said, you say that freedom is the problem, so make up your mind. No, I didn't say freedom is a problem. I said there's a trade-off of freedom. Please don't paraphrase me. I articulate my thoughts very well, and I do this for a living at a professional level that 98% of the population cannot match me. I'm not saying that to impress you, but to impress upon you. Please don't rephrase the things that I said. I clearly said there's a trade-off to freedom. I didn't say it's a problem. I love freedom. I live in America too. Travel said you can play sports and be great in school too. I never said that you couldn't. I played sports and I was good enough in school. I wouldn't say I was great. I was good. Sarah says it's possible to do both what makes them happy and help them to focus on school. Parents are lazy. It's possible, maybe. It's possible, maybe, but it depends. Brittany said they come here and buy $500,000 houses and Teslas. Well, if they can afford it, hey, somebody's taking the money. There's an American making money off that Tesla sale and making money off that $500K house. If I sell a house for $500,000, I don't care who buys it. I just want my money. TikTokery said you were describing my nephew, hopefully in a good way. SLR said they can buy the $500K home because they work hard. Yeah, but they can buy it because they got the money. I don't know if they work hard, but they got the money. And user, yes, exactly. I'm talking about legal immigrants coming here on a visa. I'm not talking about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris immigrants. Traditional said MAGA needs to change the standards of the school system. That's an uphill climb. I don't know how much Trump's going to be able to do. He only has 4 years. It seems like a long time, but it's not. We'll see. What needs to change is not the school system, because by the time kids get into the school system, they've already been indoctrinated by their parents. What needs to change is the way that American citizens think and behave in the home. That's where it starts. It's not at school. It's at home is where it starts. DAW says video games, rap music destroying our youth. Okay, directionally, I get what you're saying, but it's also video games and rap music existed when I was a kid, and I'm sure when you were a kid as well, but it didn't destroy me or you. It's how we're using it and what other counter influences are there in the lives of the people. That's what matters. Rap music always existed. It was just as raunchy and whatever words you want to use to describe rap music, gangster rap music, that existed when I was a kid the same way it exists now. The difference is not even the difference. The question is what counter influences exist to counterbalance what may be being consumed. And I consumed rap music my whole life, but I had counter influences that did not lead me to thinking I needed to live out what a rapper rapped about. Carol said, this is not a deep revelation. There should be, I missed that comment. It said, that should be common sense. Well, everybody calls something common sense after they hear it. So common sense, and you got to be careful with that phrase, because everybody calls things common sense when they know it, but then you're kind of using it as a pejorative. Oh, you don't know that? It's common sense. Well, everything's common sense when you know it. Also, there are books on the screen. I think I added that in. What are Joe Biden immigrants? The ones who are undocumented. Again, figure of speech, tongue-in-cheek comment. Alex said, I played sports, video games, and I became a scientist. Being well-rounded is possible. Yes, anecdotal example. You get the general point of what I'm saying, though, do you not? Carol said, video games help cultivate problem solving and analytical thinking. Well, it depends on which video games. There are a million different video games. Again, some of you, this happens with people, any of you who follow my lives on a consistent basis, you see this happen every day. When people are disagreeing with me, they go into these anecdotal examples and try to dive into the details of things that I said, the general points that I'm making, and try to come up with some, what do we call it, exceptions to the general point, as if they don't understand what I'm saying. All right, do you understand the general point of what I'm saying? Do you not? But I'm not going to keep reading these if people want to keep throwing those out there. Y'all, you get what I'm saying. Please, let's not do this. This is a higher level discussion. Traditional all day said kids don't even learn how to write in script anymore. Yeah, I would bet. Brittany says, I limit the screens. My daughter reads and practices a great level above her. She creates things in place. Yeah, that's a good idea. Traditional said, this is all systemic. No, it can't be. What's happening in your own house is not systemic. That's why I said it starts in the home. Michelle said, I recall this phrase, the idiot box. Yeah, from way back in the day. Alex said, you pay attention to history. This has been said to every new form of media. It's a weak argument. It's not about the form of media. So Alex, you're missing the point. It's not about the form of media. It's about what's being consumed in the media and also the counter influences. Americans have been taught to stop truly thinking by design the education system. Yes, I've trashed the educational system many times. Sarah said, every single woman I know who divorced was a married single mom. What does that even mean? How can you be a married single mom? Nate said, so you're preaching slavery. What do we call that, folks? All you should know if you watch my lives often enough, this is a straw man. Someone starts a response with so or so you're, they're about to say something that you didn't say and then challenge you to respond to it. So Nate, you got to come with something better than that. Jack said, it would be a man who thinks the divorce rate in USA is because of individualism. Ha ha. Okay. All right. There's another straw man argument. Let's see. Carol said they oversaturate the market with coders. It seems to be all they teach instead of school. Okay. I don't know enough about what you're saying to tell you that you're right or wrong about that. We'll just leave that statement right there. Let's see. Mara Mazuri said, teach man. Thank you. Carol said, parents aren't the only influences. Parents should be the strongest influence is the point. That's why I keep saying it starts in the home. Parents should have stronger influence over a child than anything or anyone else. If the parent does not, and the parent has not done their job. That one I'll stand on. Britt said, I'm raising critical thinkers that aren't oppressed by the system around them. Good idea. Jack said, LOL, blue hair professor. Jack, if you disagree with something that I said, just tell me what you disagree with. But we're having a high level discussion here. We got to go above the straw mans and the ridicules or the anecdotal examples to counter a generalization. We don't really engage with those here. So you got to bring some substance. If you got it, you can disagree, but just bring some substance. That's all I ask. Let's see. Carol said, children will always glean influence through osmosis, no matter how careful parents are. I 100% agree with that, Carol. And the parents should be a stronger influence than anything else that the children glean. That's the job of the parent. Parenting ain't easy. Sarah said, I want to teach my kids how the world is and what I value and why I'm involved with them. Well, you should be. That's your job. Nate said, you played sports. Yes, I did. I played basketball at the professional level for a decade. Babu said Trump should set the example by pulling himself away from Truth Social. All he does is tweet and golf. And I think he does a little bit more than that. Let's see. Babo says social media has fucked up society. Not really. I get what you're saying, but what's social media? Social media is just us. All social media is us posting stuff and us responding to stuff that other people post. So if we're going to blame social media, we got to blame ourselves. Social media is just us. All the apps do is to give us a platform. We decide how to use it. So we can't blame social media. Carol, I can't read that comment out loud. I'm on their app. Spiker said engineers can't build without a strong labor force. Okay, fair enough. We have 8,000 likes. Can we get some more likes, folks? How can Babo says, how can America be great with so much chaosity in our government? That's a good question. That's the reason why I'm not in politics, but somebody's going to figure it out. Maybe somebody will figure it out. You don't want to know what happens if they don't figure it out, though. That's what I'll tell you. I will tell you that much. Carol said, in America, we can do both. That's why they're so jealous. I don't think people are jealous of America. They come here. If they like what they see in America, they get a visa and they come over here. I don't think people are jealous of America. And there are other countries who absolutely don't want to be like America, and with good reason, as I explained. Carol said, imagine me caring about what a wannabe American has to say. Well, they might become an actual American, so they're not a wannabe anymore. Shannon said, what are we talking about? We're talking about Vivek Ramaswamy's comments about how America is falling behind in science, technology, engineering, and math. And he was accurate in what he said. Traditional said, I believe kids should have homework. We had it and my kids had it. Yeah, I mean, kids do still have homework, but I've changed my views on homework. I understand what you're saying, but I've changed my views on it. If the kid is in school for 8 hours, they should get all the work done then. That's how I see it. Kathy said, I understand wanting smarter people, but have you seen their culture, caste systems, slave labor, etc.? In certain places, yes, that's a thing. I wouldn't say that's widespread. And in certain cultures, yes, there are caste systems. Slave labor, that can happen here in America too. You may not have heard about it, but it can happen here in America as well. But what does that have to do with, again, how these children, when Vivek talks about culture, Kathy, he's not talking about the entire country. He's talking about the way individual people are raised to end up coming here because they have performed at such a level that they are recognized by recruiters as top level talent. So he's talking about the culture of America in general versus the individuals from other countries who come here and take jobs from, or would be jobs from Americans. So he's comparing the general Americans to the individuals who are coming here on those visas. So he's not saying the whole country of India versus America. He's saying the individuals who come here. Kathy said, we should hire Americans because this is America. I disagree. We should hire the best because they're the best. Again, I come from the sports world. Sports world, you got to be the best to get in the game. You don't get in the game just because you're from the neighborhood or because you're friends with the coach or because your mom knows my mom. No, you get in the game because you can play. And if you can't play, you ain't getting in the game. I don't care who you are. If I was coaching a sports team and my son was on the team, if he can't play, he ain't playing. He's sitting on the bench. And I'll tell him directly, yo, you ain't playing. You can't play. Michael Jordan's son played basketball. Any of you know Michael Jordan's son from basketball? Why? Because he couldn't play. That's it, period. That's the world that I come from. That's the frame from which everything I talk about comes from the frame of sports and what it takes to be successful as an athlete. So no, we are never giving someone a job just because of who they are. Immutable characteristics is not enough to have a position. You must be able to perform. This is a performance and a results-based business. Fuck that. Give somebody a spot just because of who they are shit. I'm 100% against that in all ways. Sharon said, we are already smarter, better, and they know it. Sharon, are you looking at the scoreboard? According to the scoreboard, that's not correct. Nate said they're not like us, Kendrick Lamar. Well, Nate, that's endemic of exactly what I've been talking about here. You're referring to Kendrick Lamar, where Vivek is talking about people who can actually perform in STEM categories. Kendrick Lamar ain't going to save us from getting our asses kicked as we are right now in technology. I am legally hyped said, you can't be serious right now. I can be serious, and I am serious. If you disagree with something, tell me what I got. Tell me what I got wrong. Carol said they get free handouts upon arrival. Let's be real. If someone's coming here on an H-1B visa, they came here because they had to, again, you have to perform at a certain level and it has to be documented in order for you to even come here on the visa. So I'm not talking about they, I'm talking about specific people that are endemic to the conversation we're having here today. To come here on an H-1B visa, you have to have qualified for a certain job at a certain level. You have to have certain degrees, certain paperwork, and you have to have already been vetted by the employer who's hiring you. So I'm not talking about just any immigrant in general. Kathy says, so. All right, so Kathy's starting her phrase with the word so. So y'all all know what that is. That's a tell for cognitive dissonance or a straw man, but let's just see. Maybe I'm wrong. Sometimes it doesn't happen. So Kathy says, so if the wages are suppressed, then you are illustrating the undercutting of American workers. I never said anything about wages being suppressed. I don't know where you're getting this. I think this is the second time I've seen you say something about wages being suppressed. I never even used that phrase. So Kathy, I can't respond to that. That's a straw man argument. It's something that I didn't even say. Carol said, if they are truly great, they will be just fine in their countries of origin. That sounds good, Carol, but imagine you were born in a country that was poor and you're great. All right, can you be great there? If there's no money for you to be made, no matter how good you are, what would you do? So it sounds good on the surface for you to say that, but it doesn't actually make sense. Real life tends to differ from the lab tests. So let's see. Carol said the red carpet has been rolled out by the blood and sweat of others. All right, I agree with that one. And same thing for me and you, Carol. The reason we live in such a safe world that we live in now is because of the blood and sweat of the people who came before us, generations before us. This is the safest, richest, most convenient society that has ever existed in America. 200 years ago, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now. So you are just as much a recipient of the red carpet as they are. Kathy said, that's why MAGA is upset about HB1. Well, I don't understand why people are making it about a MAGA. I do understand people making it about MAGA because Vivek said it and Vivek is connected to Trump and Trump is MAGA. But at the same time, it's affecting everybody. If you're Latin trying to get a STEM job, you're affected by HB1. If you're Black, you're affected. If you're a liberal, you're affected. If you're a Democrat, you're affected. Everybody's affected. People are getting excited about this because it's like, Vivek says something that might make MAGA mad, but understand that the things that he's saying affect all Americans. So people are getting happy about that as if it only affects people who are Trump supporters. It affects everybody. So again, it sounds good. And this is what I mean. This is kind of endemic of what I'm talking about. People getting all excited about nonsense. That's nonsense. That MAGA is mad. Everybody is affected by losing their jobs to immigrants. If you live in America, it doesn't matter if you voted Democrat or Republican. Trump is the president, and you are getting your job taken by, or what would have been your job taken by somebody who's more qualified than you, who's coming from outside the country. Being MAGA or liberal or Democrat or whatever does not change that reality. But people want to get excited about that as if it's some type of win. It doesn't prove anything. Babo said they even call Ketanji Brown Jackson a DEI hire with all her education. Well, the problem for Jackson is that Joe Biden came out and said, I'm going to pick a Black woman. So that stain of DEI is always going to be on her name because Joe Biden set her up for that. Same thing he did to Kamala Harris. If he hadn't said that and just picked somebody, it'd be a different story. But he did it. He said, I'm going to pick a Black woman. He picked a Black woman. So now they can call her DEI because Joe Biden literally put her in position to be called DEI. Kathy said they aren't hiring the Elons of the world. Tech companies bring in workers at lower wages. That's not true. You go to the details of how H-1B visas work. They have to be paid at a level that is aligned with that job for even if they were hiring an American. So that's technically false. Carol said, if God put you there, it was meant for you to stay there. Yeah, that's funny. That's funny, Carol. We'll see who's truly the cream of the crop when Trump levels the playing field. Well, Trump's going to try to level the playing field. He's not going to level the playing field. He's going to try, but he's not going to. Why he's not going to? Because he only has 4 years. And again, he was supposed to drain the swamp in his first term until he found out how many alligators were in the swamp. Not as easy as it sounds. Woodster said, what's the book about? What book are you talking about? We had 9.1 thousand likes, folks. Can we get to 10,000? Mr. Oddly Engaging said, I work in tech, never had an issue finding a good paying job because of H-1B immigration. It's probably because you're good at your job. As simple as that. Probably because you're pretty good at what you do, Mr. Oddly Engaging. If there are other people who are better than you, they would beat you out for a spot. And listen, there are people who are getting beat out for spots, but they can still get a spot. They're just not getting that spot. So let's say there are two jobs. There's one tech job that pays $150K a year. There's another one that pays $100K a year. And the H-1B person gets the $150 job and an American gets the $100 job. So they still got a job and they're still making $100K. They're just not getting the $150K job. So it's a bigger picture concept. So Woodster said, there's too many single women raising men to be beta males. That's what we need to change. That's one thing. I agree with that. All right, a couple more comments here, folks. Mara said, we were made to read books in the 70s and the 80s. So that's good. Whoever raised you had you doing that. Casa said, parents should be the number one influencers. Of course they should. Kathy says, stable parents should be the strongest influence. Not all parents are equal. Well, who decides what's stable and what's not? And once someone has a child, they're in charge. So I agree with directionally what you're saying, but you don't really have a say in what another parent does once they have a child. Even if you think they're not stable, does it really matter? Unless you're a social worker. What we're talking about here, CCX Lynn, is Vivek Ramaswamy's comments about immigrant talent coming into America and taking jobs that otherwise would have gone to Americans. Kathy said, J.D. Vance came from a broken home and rose above. Yes, he did. Anecdotal example. But you still understand my point. CC said, they recognize the top level talent because they can pay them low salaries. Again, that's not how the H-1B visa works. That's not how the visa works. They had to be paid along the lines of the same that they would pay in America. So yes, there are some places where that happens with the lower salaries, but not with these visas, and particularly in STEM jobs. That's not how it works. CC said, Americans know that STEM can provide you lots of money, but very low work-life balance. Okay, well, if you want work-life balance, then that's not the place for you to go. Amazon had that in their principles many years ago. If you want to be in management or in the C-suite at Amazon, you should not be aiming for work-life balance. If you need to go and see your kid's soccer game at 6 o'clock, don't work here. Jeff Bezos said that explicitly out of his mouth, and it was printed on their website. So it's not just with STEM. There's a lot of aspects of life. You want to be a high-performing person at the professional level, you can't be aiming for work-life balance. It ain't for everybody. Papa said, meritocracy is the way. Yes, I agree with that. CC said, where are you reading these comments from? TikTok. I'm reading TikTok comments right now. Babo said, how many people from Vivek's culture are professional athletes? Not everyone likes them. From Vivek's culture, probably very few, maybe 1 or 2 people. That's why he's talking about STEM. His conversation was about STEM. All right, that's the context here today, folks. I'm not talking about just any immigrant or any industry. We're talking specifically about science, technology, engineering, and math. That's what he was talking about. That's the concept here today. If you don't understand that space that well, then it's okay to not offer comments about things that have nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Godey said, Trump is a child of immigrant parents. He shouldn't be here too if that's the case. I don't think I said anything relating to that. What are you talking about? Karen said, would I suggest going back to school for higher education? Depends on who you are and what you're trying to get that higher education for. If you have a specific reason why the higher education is going to help you, then it might make sense. But if you don't have a specific reason, then it wouldn't make sense. So the answer is, it depends. General questions that people ask like that, the answer is usually it depends. Oh, Godey said wasn't directed at, okay, I got you. All right, a couple more comments here over on YouTube. Brando said, I'd be curious what an actual Indian would say to O-Dog's question. Brando said, yeah, of course, Vivek is Indian, yes. Colin said, they care about efficiency at all costs. It's a transnational way of thinking. He's from South Africa. Makes sense why he would think that way. Well, also because he's an entrepreneur, and in entrepreneurship, you have to be efficient. I think it's more about him being an entrepreneur. Maybe his background has something to do with that, but I think it's more his entrepreneurial background. Vivek is also an entrepreneur. Brando said, yeah, but what he was asking is if India is all Indians, run by Indians, why isn't it right for Indians to thrive there with Indian companies? Why are they depending on some other country's visa? Because there's more opportunity in America for the same effort. It's the same thing for many of you. Why does a really attractive girl move from Nebraska to fucking Los Angeles or Miami? Because there's more opportunities to be a model in Miami than there is in Nebraska. All right, so the same thing that Americans do. We do the exact same thing. All right, so some of you are making this about people moving from other countries to America. Some of you do the same thing. I live in Miami. I'm not from Miami. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but I live in Miami. Why did I move to Miami? Because I like the weather better. I like the lifestyle better. All right, the girls look better. Now, I moved here for a reason. I was the same person. I'd be the same level of good if I was doing this in Philadelphia and if I'm doing it in Miami. I moved to Miami because there's more opportunity for me to do the things that I want to do in Miami than if I was doing them in Philadelphia. So Americans, we do the exact same thing. We take advantage of the opportunities available to us, and other people are doing it too. And if they happen to be better than you, don't be mad at them, be mad at yourself. That's the way I look at it. Brandon said, why doesn't their superior culture manifest in their own homeland run entirely by them? Because again, it's not all of them. Again, I said this earlier, Brando, it's not all of them. It's not that every single Indian is better at STEM than every single American. There are some, the exceptional ones. They're the ones who come over here and beat us out for the jobs. It's not every single Indian. Same way that there are some really good basketball players living in New York who are going to end up in the NBA. It doesn't mean that everybody who picks up a basketball who lives in New York is going to dominate the whole NBA. Not all of them are that good. We pick the exceptional ones, they move up. This is what meritocracy is about. The highest level performers end up at the top of the food chain. That's the way it works. And they get chosen because they're good. Again, the same way that there might be 3 girls from Nebraska who are working at the Victoria's Secret runway modeling show. It doesn't mean every girl in Nebraska is a Victoria's Secret model, but the ones who are the best, they get selected, they get pulled out of Omaha, and they get brought to LA, and now they're dominating the modeling space. That's the way that it works. The best performers find themselves near the top of the game in meritocracies. Not everything is a meritocracy, by the way, just to be clear. O-Dog said, what you're saying is a function of culture. Vivek's statement was on culture. Yes. So again, let me say one more time. The culture Vivek was referring to was the in-home culture of individual families, not the culture of an entire country. He didn't say an entire country. He didn't say everybody in India thinks like this. He said, at home, I know. He said this specifically. Let me see if I can find, let me pull up he said this specifically in so many words. He said it exactly. He said, multiple sets of immigrant parents, that's talking one household, who actively limited how much their kids could watch TV because the TV shows promoted mediocrity. Their kids went on to become wildly successful STEM graduates. So he's pulling out an anecdotal example to explain his point. He's using this to buttress his point. He's talking about the in-home culture of the people who are coming over here, and he's comparing it to the general culture of the United States of America. So it's not an apples to apples comparison, what he's doing. And at the same time, even though it's not apples to apples, it is still accurate because of the way he explained it. So hopefully you all are getting it. This is the 3rd time that I've said that. And just on that note, Vivek is pretty good at this. If you ever listen to one of his interviews, he's a very good speaker. He's pretty good at getting his thoughts out into verbiage. All of you should be good at it as well. Vivek is very good at it. So let me see what else we got over here. On TikTok, we got anything else? Brittany, if you're still here, anything else I need to respond to here? Someone said Trump picked Herschel Walker as no degree. Biden picked the qualified, but picked him for what? They didn't get Herschel Walker didn't get picked to be vice president. What are you talking about? Carol said, is our God-given birthright to be here or move about the country freely? Okay, didn't say it wasn't. But you can move from one place to another because you see more opportunity. Same thing an immigrant does. If it's legal, doesn't mean that they're any worse or better than you. Babo said Herschel Walker's a DEI hire. What did he get hired to do? What job does Herschel Walker have? I didn't hear Herschel Walker have any job in the Trump administration. If he does have one, name it. What's the job? All right, so we answered all those. All right, I answered everything, folks. What I do these lives at 8 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. By the way, everyone, Monday through Friday is when I do these lives, 8 a.m. Eastern. So if you like this one, be here tomorrow. On Wednesday, the schedule will probably be a little bit different because everything's opening at different times on Wednesday, which is New Year's Day. But other than that, it'll be Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. So if you like this one, come back tomorrow. If you hated this one, come back tomorrow. I do these again Monday through Friday. We're usually talking about a current event. In the future, the next one, I might talk about toxic masculinity. I got that on my list, but that would have been today if Vivek didn't say what he said. But Vivek's comment led me to talking about this one. So if something happens today, then I'll push that one back and I'll talk about that. But it's usually always current events. So Bebo said Herschel will be ambassador to the Bahamas. That's a shoulder shrug. So what? He is picked as ambassador to the Bahamas. Yes. So who would you rather have in that position? And what exactly do they do? I don't think most people can answer that either one of those questions. So who cares? That's what I got to say. He ain't get picked to be on the Supreme Court or be the vice president. Trump could have picked him for that. He didn't do it. So we can't compare those two. So with all that said, folks, I need to go to the bathroom. Everybody have a great Monday. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Work on your game. We out of here.